from the guide string 1/8 inch and line up the main tube section even with the mark and parallel to the guide string. Then clamp in place. Now mark where to trim the front of the tubes. With the front end trimmed, position the tubes to the inside, in line with the guide string, and clamp in place. Tack weld this section together in 2 places. Place the assembly on the bench and slide a straight edge along the tubes to find where they meet. And scribe a line. Flip the assembly over and do the same on the opposite side. Rotate the assembly and connect the 2 scribe lines. On the bandsaw or with a hacksaw, you can cut through both sections at once. Cutting both pieces at the same time will give you a perfect mitered joint. Clamp the pieces to a flat surface and make 2 good tack welds on the back of the joint. Bolt the tube in place and check the alignment to the guide string. Remember to hold the line in 1/8 inch if the grill shell has the bead. We've installed the nut plate at the front. A small piece of 1/2 inch tubing will be welded to the nut plate. Then we'll line up the main tube and weld it in place. Slide the tube over the front mount bracket and bolt it at the rear. Align the tube with the guide string and tack weld in place. Remember to compensate for the bead, and it is important to shield the radiator while welding. Remove the tube and complete the welds at the front and rear. With both tubes mounted, you can remove the guide strings and the temporary brace. Step 11. Installing hinge mount blocks. Pull the pins from the receiver blocks and remove the lock blocks. Bolt the receivers in place, centered in the cutouts. Bolt the hinges into the aluminum mount blocks and install the black lock blocks. They're assembled properly when the lock block holes point to the rear of the vehicle and the milled shoulder of the aluminum block is toward the center of the hinge. Slip the hinge assembly into the receivers with lock block holes to the rear. Hinges should fold outward. Now look closely at the aluminum block. We must mark the position of the edge of the shoulder on the receiver. Hold a straight edge in line with the shoulder and scribe the lines. Do this on all 4 blocks. Remove the hinges and position the hood. Align the hood and secure it with tape at both ends. Clamp the corners to hold them in their proper position and color the edge of the hood near the scribe lines. Now transfer these lines to the edge of the hood at all 4 hinges and scribe along the receiver blocks. Place the hood on the workbench and with a square, mark the area to be cut out. A die grinder or a saw works best to cut out the sections for the hinge mounts. Clean up the edges, then check the fit. The blocks have a beveled edge which allow them to fit snug against the hood. Once the blocks fit properly, flip them over and mark the mount holes. Center punch and drill 3/16 inch holes. For a clean look, dog-ear the cutout corners. Bolt all 4 hinges in place, then return the hood to the car. Step 12. Adjusting the hood. To fine-tune the alignment, loosen the receivers, adjust the position and retighten the bolts. Continue adjusting until you are satisfied. The gaps may be tight in some areas, but should not touch. Once adjustments are made, the hood should open and close smoothly. Step 13. Installing the hood props. The hood props mount along the inside of the hinge tubes. Install a fixed ball joint and a quick release joint. Tighten and align the studs. 1/2 inch in from the front of the rear receiver on the inside of the tube, drill a 5/16 inch hole. Install the fixed ball joint with the nut and tighten. 1/2 inch behind the front receiver, drill a 3/16 inch hole and install the rod clamp. Clip the upper rod mount block onto the end of the prop rod and position it. Mark the mount hole position, drill a 3/16 inch hole, and bolt the block in place. Hood props lock in place, so the hood won't accidentally fall. Step 14. Cable and pull knob installation. With the hood removed, use a straight edge and mark the position of all 4 receivers. This will make reassembly quick and easy. Remove the receiver blocks. Reinstall the lock pins and tighten the pack nut. Check that the pins actuate smoothly. Slip the cable through the cable nut and attach it to the pin. Make sure the cable is properly seated and tighten the jam nut. Install the front receiver first. Feed the cable through the firewall and tape it to the wall of the tube. Now feed the rear cable through. Install the bolts with lock washers and a flat washer. Both washers must be used from here on to keep the bolts from interfering with the spring-loaded pins. Line up the receivers with the reference marks and tighten the bolts. With the rear receiver installed, the tape can be removed. Determine where to mount the pull knobs, select a position, keeping the cables as straight as possible. Do what is necessary to bolt the pull knobs in place. Remove the knob bracket and loosen the cable clamp, then feed the cables through the clamp. Slide the sheathing over each cable and feed them through the firewall until you feel them hit the rear receiver. Hold both and pull them back 2 inches, then tighten the cable clamp. Both cables must operate smoothly with the fingertips. If not, check the following. Do the lock pins slide freely? If not, the rear bolt of the receiver may be interfering. Was the sheathing pulled far enough back? Did it glide easily over the cables? The cable clamp will make an impression on the sheathing. Loosen the clamp to remove the sheathing and cut it at the rear of the impression. After the sheathing is cut, you must grind the ends to clear the opening and allow the cables to glide through. Reinstall the sheathing and tighten the clamp. Make sure cables are actuating smoothly and install the knob clamp with